The active weather that we're expecting as we go through the remainder of today. We are anticipating that we were probably going to have some severe thunderstorms, tornadoes, possibility. Been some kind of questions on how things are going to evolve, um, simply because of kind of the morning thunderstorms, a greater quantity than a lot of the models really had. But the thinking is that we're probably still going to have some active and severe weather this afternoon, and possibility of strong tornadoes still, I think, very much on the plate for some locations as we go into this afternoon and evening. But how does it all play out? It's going to take kind of a fairly quick destabilization where we start kind of getting the atmosphere more structured for severe weather the next few hours. I've seen a few bits of sunshine kind of come in behind me on the window here at my house. I expect more and more of that going forward. Here is our severe risk area for today. It does include all locations under that level 3 out of 5 severe weather risk. Again, this is always the math on this, and the math says that there's kind of a mid-range number of reports. We're not expecting to have an extreme number of severe weather reports. We're not expecting to have only a couple, somewhere kind of in the middle. And when we look in particular at the tornado risk, you'll notice it's almost the exact same locations. That's what this represents here. The orange you're looking at is the tornado risk for this afternoon. And maybe just as important is this gray that I'm going to show you here. This is the what we call significant tornado, or the strong tornado potential here. So this is where we're talking about EF2 or greater winds out of the tornadoes. And so the potential there for all of our locations pretty much to see strong tornadoes this afternoon, or a significant tornado if we were to see one form. And luckily, I think it's very much still an if, but the components are in place that active weather, certainly in tornadoes, are a possibility. Looking at the wind potential, certainly that is the greatest just if you look at straight the numbers, because storms should, as they progress from the west to east through the area, kind of join up, become more of a line, and that would then enhance the wind potential on them as they moved eastward. This information I'm showing you here is largely very similar to what we had last night at this time. Got some folks, messaging me about all different kind of activities we have around the area. If you know some folks, you might direct them to this stream even after the fact that they have some activities to plan. It's probably easier. My phone tends to blow up on these kind of days, and frankly, I don't really necessarily get to answer a whole lot of those questions just because I'm trying to make sure things behind the scenes are ready. So all that to say, back here on radar and storm track Doppler radar, we have briefly had some severe thunderstorm warnings this afternoon. I'm going to take our loop here, make it a little bit longer, make it a 3-hour loop so we can kind of go back and show you these storms. They were a lot stronger. You go back here, this would be 8:55, this morning versus now. They've lifted northward. One of the things, though, that we do have been watching the potential here as I kind of kick the radar here to kind of a clear air mode. There's kind of a line of rain-cooled air that these have kicked out. We'll call an outflow boundary. Not super evident on here. I would say most likely that boundary kind of extends kind of somewhere, I have to pick it here, somewhere kind of in this zone here, right? Not super obvious because we're between radar sites, unfortunately, with that. But this is where you kind of on the north side there have some, kind of rain-cooled air that's kind of shoved down in this zone, right? And that rain-cooled air kind of makes it act sort of like a front. The reason that's important is as thunderstorms are able to kind of move in from the west, let me click that off here for a second, as they're able to eventually kind of move in with a line from way out west here, if some of those thunderstorms can get attached to that boundary, wherever that lands, that then enhances some of the eventual tornado potential in our area. So that's one of the kind of the questions as we look at it now. I'm going to go with the satellite here for a moment. I'm going to check to see if we can probably visible. There we are. We're just kind of watching this zone out here. This is where some of the initial storms are eventually going to start and kind of roll in as we go into this afternoon. So let's look at this, how this could play out using some projections here. So this would be Futurecast. We're looking at that instability in that fuel. One thing you'll note, and this is initially depicting this as of the next hour or so, there's plenty of fuel out there for thunderstorms to work off of, right? And you can just kind of see with the holes in the fuel the way that this particular projection here. I want to double check. This is high res NAM. Let's actually change this model here because I think this is a little slow on what it's depicting. I want to make sure that we are. I'm going to change it to this and the latest there. That's a better projection. So give me a moment to kind of populate that in here. Okay. Yeah, that does a better job. So what this depicts, and where I think this is initially, I have some questions about what this is showing here. This should forecast 1 hour. I'm going to take it back to current time. Is I think this underdoes what we call the cold pool. You see in this zone up here, I think you can see my mouse showing up on that, right? See if that mouse is showing up. I don't know if the mouse is showing up correctly. Well, either way, there's a zone from basically Florence back toward north of Tupelo and Oxford where you kind of get in some of those orangish colors. So that's some of that rain-cooled air, that kind of edge there that we're watching of that. And where that rain-cooled air is, that kind of acts like that mini sort of cold front, so to speak. So as the thunderstorms kind of progress in, you can see we could potentially have maybe a couple showers and thunderstorms 3 to 4 o'clock that start developing earlier. This is where I start to have some questions, because you see what we essentially have here, where you have the blobs showing up. That's where thunderstorms are using up the fuel, right? But you also have, from really Tupelo, Houston, Kosciuszko depicted there. But then you have the batch back toward Memphis, West Helena, back toward west of Greenville depicted on that. So it kind of has two batches of storms that try to kind of progress from west to east through the area and sort of use up this fuel. And that kind of double mode there is tricky, because does the first batch end up using up all the fuel for you, or is it just kind of a puff and then it's really the second batch that's the bigger story? I think a couple of those initial thunderstorms, they're going to struggle a little bit more because we're waiting on the heating to truly kind of kick in. So I do think that we will have a few stronger thunderstorms, and maybe we have tornado warnings from that initial kind of batch. Most of the main activity with that second batch has been the thinking that will have a little extra time and could be stronger. But if that first batch waits even 30 minutes to an hour later, that then enhances it. And the fact that we're talking about two chances there hopefully limits the intensity just a little bit. But I can't say that I feel 100% confident on that thought process there. I'm going to look at the storm rotation on these and give me a moment to double check to make sure I'm on the latest data. I do believe we're on the latest data on this here. And so this will actually depict some of those thunderstorms as they develop. And so this particular projection, let me triple check to make sure that's on the latest. Yes, so that'd be 15Z. So what you can see this does is this has depicted at 1 p.m. that we should have a couple of thunderstorms in one already there, Fulton-ish area. What we can pretty clearly tell you, if you look at what is actually happening now, we go back over to, let's kick this back over to radar. We do have that one storm up there around Tishomingo County, right? But we don't have a lot of other activity out there. We do have a few things trying to kind of pop up, as you can see there, closer to, say, locations around Itawamba County there. But it's really this one up there we see. I point that out because if we come back over here to our model here for a moment, looking at that, it's kind of overdoing some of the initial showers and thunderstorms out there at this time. The more likely scenario, we're looking at 3 p.m. here, is that these thunderstorms back to the west are pretty potent by that point. And this shows a couple of individual thunderstorms there in that 3 to 4 p.m. time period, which might end up being just a hint slow. You show that storm that kind of moved from Bruce to Pontotoc and Tupelo there over that previous hour, and another one there that moved from, Holmes County into Atala County around Kosciuszko, and then another one in Houston. So we do have some individual rotating thunderstorms that would be trying to produce tornadoes at that kind of initial batch there. So this is why the timing on this initial batch here is kind of trickier, because if it holds off even a little bit more, this shows 4 p.m. versus say 3 p.m. That little bit of time there gives the atmosphere more time to recover from these morning thunderstorms, and then increase some of the tornado potential a little bit more as well. So this time frame we're looking at right here depicting is the movement of the storm between 3 and 4 p.m. 4 p.m. is the time period that you're looking at on the positioning of kind of those storms that are in the background there. And so as we go forward through, say, 5 to 6 o'clock, you can see that this is unfortunately a broken line of storms. You have the storm around Louisville, you have the storm in Clay County, the one that's east of Amory, and the one that's in Hamilton. There are breaks in that line. And when there are breaks in the line, we get a little bit more concerned for the, frankly, for the tornado potential on it. And so that's why that potential is there for the isolated strong tornado out of this. As we head towards, say, this would be depicting now 6 p.m., positioning as of 6 p.m. here. And give me 2 seconds here as my phone blows up with people that I can just remind them. We're doing a live stream right now if you want to check that out, period. Doing a live stream right now if you want to check that out, period. We're doing a live stream right now if you want to check that out. And I get that there's always some nervousness and people want to do the right thing. Do I close? Do I stay open in this scenario? We'll finish talking through that and then we'll kind of give a little bit of advice on that. Here's the tricky part. You see how there's a second batch of thunderstorms? We're looking at 7 p.m. here, and there's kind of like a next batch that comes through. How much fuel is left for that? Are the initial thunderstorms just a little bit weaker? That's really kind of the question on how that ends up playing out here. Very rarely do we have 2 batches of tornado-producing thunderstorms. I often liken this for the guys out there and girls that like football that typically if you have 2 quarterbacks that could be your starting quarterback, you have 0 quarterbacks. You've got a quarterback or you don't. And so usually when we have significant severe weather and tornadoes, you got one line or you don't. The interesting thing about today is we're hotter than usual, which is a little unusual for around here, and there's plenty of fuel around. So it's not inconceivable that you do still have that second batch try to produce some tornadoes. So this time frame we're looking at here again, I'll kind of rewind this for a moment. And so this is pretty much now. Projections kind of overdoing that storm you see around Fulton and Red Bay. This would be 12:30 to 1 o'clock or so. Overdone. That you're not going to have something that strong at that point. At least not expecting it to be. Now this is 2:30. Let's stop it here at 3. This is 3 p.m. And what we see at 3 p.m. is thunderstorms really starting to get going, starting to develop, trying to produce tornadoes, and they are isolated kind of by themselves. Also, and I haven't really shown this on the wider shot here, what we have is we have a kind of cold front that stretched there from basically the Missouri boot heel back out towards southern Arkansas there. The cold front's what's initiating that there. And so the concern is what's causing these thunderstorms in advance of that is just the heating of the day, what we call differential heating. And so it'd be kind of what we call an open warm sector of thunderstorms trying to pop up. That's the case where we don't typically have as much lift, but if you can get one going, that you have more rotation, you don't necessarily have more rotation, but you get more discrete. And so sometimes it can focus more in just that one spot as opposed to just becoming a line of thunderstorms. So it ends up being a little bit more discrete, and that enhances tornado potential. So this is 3 p.m. And for timing purposes, we kind of talked about what could happen. This is 4 p.m. This is 5 p.m. This is 6 p.m. This is 7 p.m. This is 8 p.m. This is 9 p.m. And this is 10 p.m. And you notice as these storms get more into Alabama, how they get more linear, they get less just one blob, it becomes more elongated. That's, again, where that wind enhancement starts to occur for some of those spots. Come back over here to this mode where I was kind of circling some things a minute ago. Let's clear off those circles, and let's look, and we'll come back to that here in a minute as I want to see a few more things on that. But I want to go back to the severe threats for a moment. So the overall severe weather risk, that's what's depicted here for today, level 3 out of 5 severe weather risk. The tornado risk today, involving all locations, if you worked out the math on it, 10% chance of a tornado within a certain distance of your home in those spots there depicted, a fairly elevated risk. That's a level 3 out of 5. And maybe most importantly is that significant tornado risk that does include most locations. And this, what we depict here, is when we're showing the possibility that we could be talking about EF2 or greater. Boy, that was not my best handwriting, was it? But EF2 or stronger tornadoes in this zone. And it's because of those individual storms that's the possibility that we're watching. You get those individual storms. And so that could be the concern. So the timing here, as we showed you a moment ago, as early as perhaps 3 to 4 o'clock, as late as maybe 10 or so on the Alabama side. Some questions as to whether or not the atmosphere can fully hold off. There are a lot of folks that didn't see storms. I didn't see storms at my house, but I'm close to that boundary. And how that rain-cooled air from that line of thunderstorms could figure in to how this works. So I think the combination of those things says there's a strong tornado potential today. I think you can kind of tell by what I'm saying. I'm not convinced on how many of those rotating thunderstorms are really going to develop and remain discrete. Confidence is much higher that storms congeal into a line by the time they roll into Alabama in parts, and that line then produces 60, 65 mile per hour winds. But we're kind of in that zone of as storms are maturing overhead. And so how far do they mature? Do they fully produce the tornadoes? One of the things I have not mentioned at all and should have is that I do think there's a potential for some very large hailstones with this. As I kind of clear off what we have on there, I do think it's possible we could have some really large hailstones in our area as these storms are developing. Slightly better chance back to the west, but if the storms really kind of pop up and get going in our area, 2-inch hail or greater remains a possibility out of some of these as well. So I don't want to diminish that. Okay, so hopefully that kind of makes sense. That's sort of our overview here. I want to check the high-res, we'll call meso-visible satellite here. There we are, just to kind of see if we can start to see. This particular satellite allows us to, I'm going to make this a 1-hour loop here. Allows me to kind of see where we're getting a little extra convergence when we don't have a lot of stuff on there. Looks like Weather Service up in, let me pause that here for a second, go to the final scan. Weather Service up there in Huntsville went ahead and issued a tornado warning on that thunderstorm there just outside of Tishomingo County. They must be getting some kind of report on that there. If description on that's confirmed, give me a moment to double check that. I have that up here. That's probably one of the bings you've been hearing in the background. Let me pull that up. Well, we've been talking, that is a North Mississippi Storm Chasers having a view on that there. Boy, and it looks like Tennessee Valley Weather might have had a decent shot of that as well. That's not good. Okay, so that's why they issued So somebody's got a camera view on that there, and that's part of the reason for that. So that's been a lot of binging you've been hearing in the background while I've been talking there. So I'll have to pull up that camera here in a minute. That's just outside our area, so I'm not gonna. And that's technically not one of ours, so not something I can show. Yep, I can see what they're talking about there. It's low contrast, but yeah, that's worth a tornado warning. So that's the thing. So if that ugly storm is prompting that, very good chance that we'll have a pretty active afternoon. I don't think Ben would hate me too badly if I put that on. Well, I'm not going to show it. Anyway. Yeah. So there you go. So active afternoon likely on the way, including severe weather, including potentially tornadoes. And obviously that's what we'll be tracking and watching into the afternoon. So keep it here for the latest information. And that one there was fairly well expected because our projections kind of had on the south side there. Hold on, let me get the thing back on it. The southernmost storm. I've got too many windows here. There we go. the southernmost storm in this line kind of try and do that, but it's a little later. It kind of had it try and do something back out here, farther to the west. So there you go. Well, let's go ahead and wind this down so I can get all my stuff up and ready to get in there. Peak time period again expected to be between around 3 p.m. and let's say 8 p.m. or so. Could it get going earlier? Yes. And we are watching. There are at least some thunderstorms out there with this. Not thunderstorms, but the beginnings of some thunderstorms there near Algoma and Saltillo. Again, I got too many browsers up here. Let me minimize that. Let's get back to this. I'm going to get back to the visible satellite. So again, that's good. Yeah, so you can see there from Saltillo back to Pontotoc and Bruce, a few more of those thunderstorms getting a little bit more, or the beginnings of those thunderstorms getting a little bit, the tops getting a little stronger there. So we're getting closer to what we would refer to as initiation, because I can see if I can draw on this here. Just this batch here, that initial batch of thunderstorms trying to get going closer to there. If you kind of watch that loop, that's sort of the zone there where things could start going. And then, of course, there's the other one kind of back farther to the west. Okay, let's pray and move on. So weather call, code red, we always talk about those. Make sure, the weather app, that you have those multiple layers that will alert you if you're in the danger zone. We do anticipate we will have tornado watches issued within the next couple of hours here. This will probably push that watch issuance, the initial watch issuance up a little bit. Yeah. So anyway, let's pray. Jesus, protect these people. Give me the words. Help me to think clearly and concisely. And God, just help me to trust you as we prepare them. Help people to make wise choices. Help them to trust you and trust their gut on what they should do as far as dismissing and canceling and the choices they make related to that are concerned. And God, just protect us from these storms. Keep people safe. God, we know we live in a broken world and things happen. But God, we know that you can use all things for our good. And God, I pray that you just keep us safe today. In Jesus' name, amen. Okay, we will see you at 4 o'clock at the latest. Wouldn't it all be shocking if we're doing some coverage before that there? And then through the evening on WTVA 9 News. So keep it here for the latest information. We'll keep you up to date.